Paige Bueckers' teammate just decided to take unprovoked shots at Caitlin Clark on social media and a podcast, claiming Paige has the killer instinct that Caitlin supposedly lacks. Bold move from someone averaging 7 points per game. The backlash was immediate, the lies were obvious, and now the internet is making sure she regrets every word. This is peak WNBA drama. Drop a comment right now. Why do WNBA players keep using Caitlin Clark's name for attention when she's literally minding her business and not bothering anyone? Let's establish who we're talking about here because context matters. Luisa Geiselsoder, a German center who plays for the Dallas Wings and happens to be Paige Bueckers' teammate, decided that going on a podcast and then doubling down on Instagram to criticize Caitlin Clark was somehow a good career move. This is a player who was drafted in the second round back in 2020 and averaged 7 points and 5 rebounds last season. Not terrible numbers, but certainly not the resume of someone who should be out here trying to diminish the accomplishments of the player who literally saved the WNBA's relevance. Yet here we are, watching another player who benefits directly from Caitlin's impact decide that public disrespect was the way to go. Luisa G., that plays for the Dallas Wings, Paige Bueckers' teammate, felt the need to go on Instagram and take shots at Caitlin Clark to try to uplift Paige Bueckers. You can uplift Paige Bueckers without talking about Caitlin Clark. You could do that. She wants to go play captain saver for Paige Bueckers based on fans' opinion, and she wants to go take shots at Caitlin Clark on Instagram. Then she goes on a podcast and also takes shots at Caitlin Clark. The whole situation started on a podcast called The Journey, where the host asked Luisa to choose between Caitlin Clark and Paige Bueckers. Now, here's the thing about loaded questions like that. You can simply decline to answer or give a diplomatic response that acknowledges both players' strengths without creating drama. But apparently, that option didn't occur to Luisa because she went full defense mode for Paige while simultaneously taking shots at Caitlin. The podcast was in another language, which honestly might have been strategic because she probably thought American fans wouldn't catch wind of what she said. Wrong. The internet finds everything, translates everything, and amplifies everything, especially when it involves Caitlin Clark. But Luisa didn't stop with the podcast. She took it to Instagram, which is where this whole thing went from questionable to absolutely wild. When fans pointed out that one of the reasons many prefer Caitlin over Paige is Caitlin's killer instinct, that undeniable competitive edge that shows up in crucial moments, Luisa felt compelled to respond. And her response was peak delusional. She wrote, and I'm quoting here, "Caitlin Clark is definitely an important part of the revolution in women's basketball. Definitely not the only one, though. Paige Bueckers has a killer instinct. I can confirm 100% from live experience. Let's unpack how wrong literally every part of that statement is. First, the definitely not the only one part. This is the classic move that insecure people make when someone else's success makes them uncomfortable. Yes, technically speaking, other players contribute to women's basketball. Nobody's arguing that Caitlin is the only player in the league, but when we're talking about who revolutionized the sport, who brought unprecedented attention and revenue, who sold out arenas home and away, who made casual sports fans care about the WNBA for the first time, that's overwhelmingly one person. The ratings literally dropped 55% when Caitlin got injured during the playoffs. 55%. That's not, oh, she's one of many contributors. That's, she is the single biggest factor in the league's recent success. For Luisa to try to minimize that is either ignorance or deliberate dishonesty. Second, the claim that Paige Bueckers has killer instinct that she can confirm 100% from live experience. Okay, so you played against Paige and she competed hard. Cool. Nobody's saying Paige isn't competitive or doesn't try to win. But killer instinct isn't just about trying hard. It's about delivering in the biggest moments under the most pressure consistently. It's about taking and making the shots that matter most when everyone's watching and everything's on the line. And while Paige has had some great moments, she's also had plenty of times where she seemed to disappear when her team needed her most. That's not hate, that's observation. Meanwhile, Caitlin built her entire reputation on hitting impossible shots in crucial moments and carrying her team when nobody else could. The comparison isn't even close. What makes this situation particularly absurd is who's making these statements. Louisa Geisel-Soter plays for the Dallas Wings, a team that finished with a 9-31 record last season. They had the third lowest attendance in the entire WNBA. Paige Bueckers, for all her talent, couldn't move the needle on that. The team struggled, attendance was terrible, and there was zero buzz around Dallas basketball. Meanwhile, Caitlin Clark was selling out every arena she played in, including opponent arenas, generating record television ratings, and creating a cultural phenomenon around women's basketball. So when Louisa tries to argue that it's not just Caitlin revolutionizing the sport, the obvious question is, where were all these other contributors when attendance and ratings were terrible before Caitlin arrived? The timing of this drama is also suspect. Caitlin wasn't out doing interviews talking about the WNBA or other players. She was playing golf at Michael Jordan's private club, working on her game during the off-season, literally minding her own business. She wasn't starting beef. She wasn't shading anyone on social media. She wasn't doing anything except existing and being excellent at what she does. Yet, somehow, that was still too much for Louisa to handle without feeling the need to take unprovoked shots. Caitlin Clark has more game-winning shots, more clutch performances, and more moments of taking over games single-handedly than probably any player in recent women's basketball history. Her college career was defined by hitting impossible threes with defenders draped all over her in the final minutes of crucial games. Her rookie WNBA season included multiple performances where she willed her team to victories they had no business winning. If that's not killer instinct, then the term has no meaning. Meanwhile, Paige, for all her skills, has had a career plagued by injuries and inconsistency in the biggest moments. Again, that's not hate. That's just factual observation based on what's happened on the court. The fan reaction to Louisa's comments was swift and brutal, as it should have been. People flooded the Instagram post pointing out the absurdity of a second-round pick who averages 7 points trying to diminish the accomplishments of someone who's already a generational talent. Others noted that Louisa is only even relevant enough to have this conversation because Caitlin elevated the entire league's profile. Without Caitlin's impact, Louisa would be playing to even smaller crowds in even more obscurity. The irony of biting the hand that feeds you while claiming it's not actually feeding you is apparently lost on some people. What's particularly frustrating about situations like this is the pattern it represents. This isn't the first time a WNBA player has felt the need to use Caitlin Clark's name for attention or relevance. It's become a reliable strategy. Say something controversial about Caitlin, get immediate engagement and headlines, then either double down or claim you were misunderstood. The problem is that this strategy only works because Caitlin is so much bigger than everyone else, that mere association with her name drives traffic and conversation. Louisa's podcast appearance and Instagram comments got attention specifically because she mentioned Caitlin. Without that connection, nobody would care what she thinks about Paige Bueckers or anything else. The claim that Paige has killer instinct that Louisa can confirm from live experience is especially laughable when you consider the actual head-to-head history. When Paige and Caitlin have gone up against each other, Caitlin has consistently been the better player. She's put up bigger numbers, made more crucial plays, and demonstrated that killer instinct everyone's debating. So what exactly is Louisa confirming? That Paige tries hard? Okay, great. So does literally every professional athlete. That's the baseline, not some special distinction that proves that she has the same competitive fire as Caitlin. Another angle that makes this whole situation ridiculous is the Dallas Wings' complete lack of success. If Paige Bueckers really had this undeniable killer instinct that makes her comparable to or better than Caitlin Clark, wouldn't the Wings have been better than a 9-31 team? Wouldn't attendance have been higher? Wouldn't there have been more buzz and excitement around the franchise? The fact that none of those things happened suggests that maybe, just maybe, Paige isn't actually on Caitlin's level regardless of what her teammates want to claim. Results matter, and the results overwhelmingly favor one player over the other. It's not just her, it's all of us mentality is also particularly toxic because it's rooted in denial of reality. Yes, team success requires multiple contributors. Yes, the WNBA benefits when multiple players are playing well and generating interest. But pretending that everyone's contribution is equal when the data clearly shows otherwise is just dishonest. Caitlin Clark's impact on television ratings, attendance, merchandise sales, and cultural relevance is measurably greater than any other player's. Acknowledging that isn't disrespectful to other players. It's just stating facts. But apparently some players would rather lie to themselves and their fans than accept an uncomfortable truth. What makes Louise's comments even more frustrating is that they're unnecessary. Nobody was attacking Paige Bueckers. Fans were simply explaining why they prefer Caitlin, and one of the reasons they cited was killer instinct. That's not a personal attack on Paige. That's a factual observation about differences in playing style and mentality. But Louisa decided to interpret it as disrespect that required a response, and in doing so, she actually created way more negative attention for Paige than the original comments did. Now instead of just a few fans discussing playing styles, you have a full-blown controversy where people are analyzing Paige's career and pointing out all the ways she doesn't measure up to Caitlin. Great job defending your teammate Louisa. The broader issue here is that the WNBA continues to have a Caitlin Clark problem, and that problem is entirely self-created. Instead of embracing the player who's bringing unprecedented attention and money to the league, certain players seem determined to minimize her impact and drag her down. It's the same energy that led to the physical targeting during her rookie season, the same energy that led to players complaining about the attention she received, and the same energy that now has Paige Bueckers' teammate out here lying about killer instinct on podcasts and Instagram. At some point, these players need to ask themselves whether this strategy is actually helping them or just making them look petty and insecure. The fact that Louisa thought this was a good idea also raises questions about judgment and media training. Did nobody on the Wings organization pull her aside and say, "Hey, maybe don't go on podcasts talking negatively about the most popular player in the league"? Did her agent not explain that creating controversy around Caitlin Clark only generates negative attention for yourself because fans will inevitably point out all the ways you don't measure up? The lack of strategic thinking here is almost as bad as the dishonesty itself. Even if Louisa genuinely believes what she said, which seems unlikely, there's zero upside to saying it publicly. Looking at the situation from Caitlin's perspective, it must be exhausting. She can't just exist and work on her game during the off-season without someone, somewhere, deciding they need to take shots at her to defend someone else. She didn't ask for the comparisons. She didn't start the conversation about killer instinct. She's literally just out here being great at basketball and living her life. Yet somehow that's still too threatening for certain people to handle without feeling the need to diminish her accomplishments. That says way more about them than it does about Caitlin. The instant regret part of this situation comes from the fact that Louisa's comments accomplished nothing positive and generated massive backlash. She didn't successfully defend Paige because the arguments were too weak to be convincing. She didn't elevate her own profile except as someone who made foolish comments. She didn't change anyone's mind about Caitlin's impact or importance. All she did was ensure that more people are now comparing Paige and Caitlin directly, which only makes the gap between them more obvious. If the goal was to help Paige's reputation, this spectacularly backfired. So Paige Bueckers' teammate decided talking trash about Caitlin Clark was a smart move, and the internet immediately reminded her why that's always a terrible idea.